Hey, that's Mike Pereira. I'm Dean Blandino. Another segment of Last Call. Let's start in Green Bay, Seattle at Green Bay. The return of Russell Wilson, the return of Aaron Rodgers, going head to head, but there were a couple of officiating issues that people wanted to talk about. Field Yates tweeted, "Can someone please explain to me how this isn't a clear recovery by Darrell Taylor?" Aaron Rodgers muffs the snap. He jumps on it. Taylor jumps on it. Mike, who had it? What's the rule? Break it down for us.
Boy, I tell you, it was really close. Not much was said about it at the time, but, you could take a look at Darrell Taylor. Seems to fall on the ball more so than Aaron Rodgers does, but Rodgers has the ball with his left arm also. And so you really have a reviewable situation, which you could look at in replay as to who recovered the loose ball. The rule is this, that the first person that recovers it gets it. But if there's a tie, if both people have joint possession, then it goes to the offensive team, which in this case would be Aaron Rodgers. So you look at the play, and I must have looked at it 15 times, and I do think I could come up with joint possession of a loose ball. And so therefore Rodgers gets the ball. You look at replay, there's no way they could have changed that. There's no way that they could have given Darrell the ball. So it's kind of one of those situations where, in many situations, right, Dean? So if it's a possible catch or an interception, if it's joint possession, it goes to the offense. And in recovery of a loose ball, if it's joint possession of the loose ball, then it's which team last had possession. But you have one of many crazy plays.
Yeah, and we're always helping the offense. When is the tie going to go to the defense? Even in baseball, the tie goes to the runner. Why can't the tie go? You gotta get on the base before the fielder catches the ball. I'm sick of the tie going to the offense, but you're right. It does go to the team last in possession. To me, you can make a case that Rodgers had his hands on the ball. Taylor had his hands on the ball. It does look pretty close to joint possession. You don't see a lot of actual joint possession plays. This one looks pretty close. They ruled it, and again, then you take the replay consideration. They ruled that Rodgers recovered it. There was nothing replay could do in terms of overturning it. It wasn't clear and obvious. If they had ruled that Taylor recovered it, I don't think they can overturn it. It's really, really close. Like I said, it might be 99% right, almost to that simultaneous possession. An interesting play in that game, and a lot of people were talking about the officiating in that game because there were several calls, and that was certainly one of them.
Well, let's move to college for a second. Let's move to Miami, Florida State. How about this? A game ending on a spike, a quarterback spiking the ball when there was still time left on the scoreboard. There's not a lot of people, I don't think, Dean, that understand that, but I know you do. So explain the damn thing. What the heck happened?
Yeah, and I just want to say, being how Miami, Florida State, how far that matchup has really dropped. And that was the matchup when you think about in the 80s and the 90s, even into the 2000s with the wide right games. And that was the game. That was the game. I remember at Hofstra University, we had a great football team, but we were Division III. And so the Hurricanes were my adopted team. And I remember watching the Hurricanes in Florida State and guys like Gino Torretta and Michael Irvin and Warren Sapp and Derek Brooks and all these amazing games. And now it's kind of an afterthought. But that aside, that is the rule. Okay. It takes me back to the 2012 Rose Bowl with Russell Wilson, Wisconsin. And he had to spike the ball to get another snap, and time expired. And the colleges put in a rule to say, if the clock is going to start on the ready for play, which is typically right the first down in the middle of the field, now clock is stopped, but we're going to wind it on the ready for play. There has to be a minimum of 3 seconds on the clock for the offense to spike the football. If there's less than 3, obviously 2 or 1, you have to run a play. So it avoids this whole situation. Was there time on the clock? The rule is simple. It's clear. Hey, the Florida State, they knew it on their sideline. 2 seconds, you can't spike it. Miami tried to spike it, game over.
Yeah, there are a couple situations that are unique where the game ends when there still shows time on the clock, right? You have the possibility of 10-second runoffs. for a foul that's created inside of 10 seconds that stops the clock by the offense could in fact end the game, even though technically there was still time left on the clock. So it's one of these rules that people, you see the 10-second runoff far more often than you see the spike with under 3 seconds. But again, it is an unusual rule. And if you think Miami, Florida State has taken a dive, how about the state of Florida? I mean, are we really looking at Florida and Samford as being a big win for Florida in a game with 130 some odd points? Florida football in the tank. That's for darn sure. Crazy.
All right, let's move on. Let's go back to the NFL. Sunday Night Football, Chiefs and Raiders. The AFC West matchup, the rivals. This rivalry goes back so many years, playing for first place. Think about the Chiefs. The Chiefs, everybody's been down on the Chiefs. Hey, they're a win away from being in first place in the AFC West. They get the win, but everybody was talking about this play. A lot of people don't understand this rule. We had a Chiefs player. The Raiders were punting. Their gunner goes out of bounds. Two Chiefs players making contact, no flag thrown. Mike, what's the rule in this situation in terms of blocking out of bounds on a punt?
Yeah, interesting play because Dylan Stoner goes out of bounds, but he's blocked out of bounds. So he's driven out of bounds. So now he can come back in and participate in the play and be the first to touch. You have to take an immediate angle, though, back toward the field of play. The rule says immediately, there's that, but we always look and say if he's taking an angle back into the field of play, then you're okay. But the thing is, you have to come back into the field of play. And if there is a player like Chris Lamons was waiting on the sidelines, he was waiting on the sidelines to block him as he was trying to come in, but Stoner turned upfield and avoided that block. He avoided the block. So therefore, once you turn parallel to the sidelines to avoid a block without coming back in bounds, then you have committed a foul that is called unsportsmanlike conduct. Now, Lamons, he can't go out of bounds and get them, and that's what people were talking about. But we always looked at it as saying 4 feet. So if the gunner is out of bounds and then the player who goes out of bounds to block him, both of his feet are out of bounds when he makes the contact, then you have a foul on, in this case, which would have been Lamons. But he didn't. He still had a foot in bounds when he made the contact. So that block was indeed legal. And it's up to Stoner to basically make that angle back in and take on that block. Look, the rule's reasonable. You have to make an attempt to come back in bounds immediately because the defense can't go out or the receiving team can't go out and block you. So it would be unreasonable to say that you could run straight down the field out of bounds without any penalty when nobody could go out and block you. So again, one of those situations that is weird to some degree. And again, it is a 15-yard penalty on the gunner on the offensive team, but I think it's a reasonable rule and it's been around for a long time.
Yeah, there's a lot of elements. I remember the 4 feet. I remember when I first started at the NFL and officials were talking about 4 feet. And I said, hey, what does that mean? What does that mean? And like you said, that means the player, the gunner, his feet have to be out of bounds and the blocker's feet have to be out of bounds. And obviously the blocker would have to be initiating contact. You have the gunner can't go out of bounds on his own. If he goes out of bounds on his own without contact by the opponent, that's a foul. And then like you said, can't stay out of bounds, can't use the sideline to your advantage. You have to angle back in to be legal. And then certainly you can't go out of bounds and initiate a block. And that's something that's officiated by an official who's many times 40, 50 yards away because it's the deep wing official that has to look for that, look at how they got out of bounds, the blocking. Is there a hold? Did he go out of bounds on his own? Did he come back in? Is he the first to touch? That's a really difficult play to officiate. And a lot of it isn't reviewable in terms of the blocking and that type of thing. But I agree, the rules are pretty reasonable. And again, you got to try to stay in the field of play. And that's the goal. That's the intent of the rules, to keep players in the field of play. Because once you go outside the field of play, then it becomes a safety issue. You're running into people on the sideline, and we want to avoid that at all costs.
So let's do a pop quiz for Dean Blandino, a pop quiz. There's letters for every foul, like roughing the passer is RPS, right? Okay. clipping is CLP. You know, false start is FST. These are initials that officials use. So a pop quiz to Dean Blandino when the gunner goes out of bounds on his own. It is a foul. That is a 5-yard penalty, by the way, if he goes out of bounds on his own. What is a player going out of bounds? What is the three-letter term?
You said it. You said it a couple of times. What type of quiz is it?
It's a pop quiz. P-O-P.
P-O-P, right? P-O-P. Player out of bounds on a punt. That was always my favorite. That was one of my favorite things to do. When we created a new foul, it was like, let's come up with the foul code. Let's see, how can we do this? Is it POP? Is it PPO? What can we do? That was one of my favorite things at the NFL, but I'm a little bit weird.
Well, we didn't have many favorite things at the NFL, but that's it. That's Blandino. I'm Pereira. That's the last segment here of Last Call.